If you don't know where to start with Malta's NIS2 Cybersecurity law, then this video is for you. So I'll show you how this law is structured, what are the main requirements for companies that need to comply with NIS2, and I'll show you a couple of templates and how to write these documents to actually comply with this law. So after you watch this video, you'll have a clear idea of what the key points are to comply with and also what kind of documents to use for that purpose. Okay, let's start with the basics. In April 2025, Malta has published an order called Measures for a High Common Level of Cybersecurity across the European Union, and for simplicity I'll call this document NIS2 Law in Malta. And so far Malta has not published any other recommendations or implementation regulations regarding this NIS2 law. So unlike other European countries, this is the only document that you actually have to focus on. And below this video you'll find a link to an official site where you can actually open and download this law. Now this law is kind of similar to other European countries because it describes some general things like, which companies need to comply, what are the government authorities and what is their role in regards to cybersecurity and critical infrastructure, how do they need to do this oversight, what are the penalties, how is a national cyber crisis managed, these kind of things. Of course, this law also specifies some requirements for cybersecurity risk management measures, but not too much. So this is very similar also to other European laws. And I'll show you how this law looks like in a minute in this video. But I would like to also emphasize here that there is this Commission Implementing Regulation, or CIR 2024-2690, which was published by the European Commission, and that specifies detailed requirements for cybersecurity measures for digital companies that are in the scope of NIS2. Now, NIS2 directive, but also this NIS2 law in Malta specify 18 sectors in total, and out of these 18 sectors, only 3 sectors are covered by this Commission implementing regulation. So, what does this mean in practice? If your company is operating in Malta, and if it belongs to any of these 3 sectors for digital companies, then it has to comply with both this CIR and with NIS2 law in Malta. Whereas if your company belongs to any of these 15 remaining sectors, then it has to comply only with NIS2 law in Malta and not with CIR. And if you want to learn more about this Commission implementing regulation, take a look at my other video which explains in more detail this CIR. Okay, let me now show you the most important requirements from this NIS2 law in Malta. Okay, here you can see the full text of NIS2 law from Malta, and this is actually the original in English language. And as we scroll down here, you will see several requirements, but let me actually jump to some most important requirements here. So first of all, this section here specifies which companies need to comply. And basically there are no surprises here. So if you read the NIS2, then exactly the same thing is also written here in Malta's NIS2 law. So basically it specifies all the companies that need to be compliant. Now, I'll also show you at the end of this document this annex, and this annex specifies all these 18 sectors that need to be compliant with NIS2 law. Okay, let's move on to this government oversight. So basically here you will see that this Critical Infrastructure Protection Advisory Board will need to be set up, but also even more importantly, there is this Critical Infrastructure Protection Department. So basically this CIP department is the one that actually enforces this law in Malta. Going further, what you will see is that there is this requirement for companies, for both essential and important entities, to appoint a qualified auditor that will verify that this company has actually implemented all cybersecurity measures. And so you'll notice that I marked this in red because actually this is a requirement that does not exist in NIS2 nor in CIR. So basically everything that you'll see marked with red is something that is on top of these European requirements. Okay, now let's go further to cybersecurity measures. This is probably the most interesting part. And here you will see the requirements around governance and actually the management bodies, their responsibilities. So basically nothing surprising here. Again, same requirements as in NIS2. And here you also see this requirement that the senior management needs to go for training, and that they also need to enable training for their employees on a regular basis. And actually there is another video where I show how actually to organize this training for NIS2. And then further you will see these cybersecurity risk management measures. And again, as you will see throughout this article, they're very similar to what actually NIS2 requires, except this one. There is actually a requirement to appoint this security liaison officer, and basically that this person actually coordinates all of these things and represents the entity towards the CIP department. Such requirement does not exist in NIS2 directive nor in CIR. Okay. When we go further, you will see that cybersecurity shall include all of these things, and basically they are copied from NIS2 directive. And there are also reporting requirements. Again, there is basically nothing new when compared to NIS2 directive. And finally, let's go for this annex where the sectors are specified. So as you can see, energy sector with a couple of subsectors, so electricity, heating and cooling, oil, gas, hydrogen, and so on. Then the second sector is transport. And basically, again, these sectors are exactly the same as in a NIS2 directive, so no surprises there. Then the next one is banking, financial market infrastructures, health, drinking water, wastewater, digital infrastructure. This is actually one of the three sectors that are basically about digital companies that also have to comply not only this NIS2 law, but also with CIR. Same thing for this ICT service management, business to business, same thing. And basically here you can see that these are managed service providers and managed security service providers, whereas these digital infrastructure companies are internet exchange point providers, DNS service providers, top-level domain name registries, and so on. Further, public administration space, and then when we go for this second annex, you will see also some other critical infrastructure, so postal and courier services, waste management, manufacture, production and distribution of chemicals, production, processing and distribution of food, manufacturing with various types of manufacturing here, and also this digital providers. So again, this is the third type of digital companies, and so basically these are online marketplaces, search engines and social networking platforms. And the final sector, this is the 18th sector, is research. Okay, and let me now show you how to write a couple of documents to cover these requirements and also reduce some effort in your compliance process. Okay, here you can see this top-level document called Policy on Information System Security, and this is a template from Advisera's NIS2 documentation toolkit that is adapted specifically for Malta's NIS2 law. And when we scroll down, you will see the table of contents. So basically this one defines the terminology, how the cybersecurity is managed, how you set the objectives, requirements, risk management measures, these kind of things. But this is a top-level document. It doesn't really go into details of cybersecurity, because for that purpose there are other policies like, access control policy or a backup policy. Anyway, let me just show you the references here, so you can see that the reference is here to this NIS2 order. Basically this is NIS2 law. And by the way, you can also see here in the comments directly the link where you can find the original source of this law. Of course, a reference is to NIS2 directive, but also to the CIR, and finally to ENISA's technical implementation guidance. So basically all the most important references are here. Of course, there is also ISO 27001 standard clause 5.2. Now, I'll come back to why all of these references are important in a minute, but let me first show you some specifics in this document. So let me show you this section 4.5 about controlling cybersecurity. As you can see here in this second paragraph, it says a cybersecurity audit must be conducted at least once every year by an authorized cybersecurity auditor. So here, actually, you see how we adapted this document for the specific requirement in Malta's NIS2 law. And when we actually move forward, you will see that there is this job title for security manager. Of course, you can enter any job title that you see appropriate here, but the point is who will act as a security liaison officer and as a point of contact between the company and the critical infrastructure protection department or CIP department. So again, this is basically how we adapted the documents for NIS2 law in Malta. And now let me give you, let's say, an overview of how we are doing this adaptation of documents for a local market. So basically we do it in 3 steps. First, we actually develop all the policies and procedures according to these international standards like ISO 27001, ISO 27005, ISO 22301, which is for business continuity and so on. And then as a second step, we adapt these documents for NIS2 directive, for CIR 2690, also according to this ENISA implementation guidance. So basically in the second step, we adapt all of these documents to all the documents that are relevant on the European Union level. And then as a third step, we then adapt these documents for a specific local market, for any specific law, in this case Malta's NIS2 law. Now, you might actually choose a different way to build these documents and to adapt them. You don't have to follow these 3 steps, but in our case, we actually found that these 3 steps are the easiest on how to do this. And of course, to speed things up in your company and to reduce the effort, you can use these templates from Advisera's NIS2 documentation toolkit. And by the way, you can take a look at this other video where I explain how to use this NIS2 documentation toolkit. And yeah, here you can see this other document from this toolkit, asset management procedure. So as you can see, these first page is formatted basically the same across all the documents. And let's see how the table of the contents looks like. So planning and acquisition of assets, inventory management, identification, labeling, recording, deployment, use, maintenance, optimization, decommissioning, disposal, control of the asset lifecycle, verification and audit. So you can basically see that all of the elements of handling assets are covered here in this procedure. Let's see reference documents again, very similar to the previous one. So NIS2 Law, NIS2 Directive, CIR, NISA Technical Implementation Guidance, and then ISO 27001. And then comes the main part of this document, so the 3.1 planning acquisition, and then basically you have this definition that you have to insert this job title for asset manager and that this person needs to perform all of these things. You also have these NISA technical implementation guidance, examples of evidence. So basically this document is made in such a way that covers all the angles, so to say. Okay, I hope this was helpful, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions around this NIS2 law in Malta, and I'll answer you as quick as I can. And to access these documents from NIS2 documentation toolkit for Malta, you can click the link in the description below this video and you'll be able to open free demo access to this toolkit and also download the free demo version of these documents. And see also my next video that explains how to use this NIS2 documentation toolkit from Advisera. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos, and I publish videos about cybersecurity governance and compliance every week. Thanks for watching.